Hi, my name's Anthony Massaro and I'm a principal at Russell Kennedy. I specialise in workplace relations and I do a lot of work in the aged care space. What I'm going to be talking about today is the operation of the Victorian Labour Hire Licensing Scheme and how that's going to work in the aged care context. The Labour Hire Licensing Act establishes a scheme whereby anyone who's defined to be a labour hire service provider needs to have a licence to be able to continue to do that work. And the other side of that scheme is that anyone who engages a labour hire service provider needs to ensure that that labour hire service provider has a licence. And if they don't do that, that can attract significant penalties for both parties. The scheme commenced on the 29th of April 2019, but there's a 6-month transition period. So what that means is all labour hire service providers have until the 29th of October to apply for their licences. Any business that supplies workers to a host to perform work in and as a part of that host's business is a labour hire service provider. So a classic example of that in the aged care context would be an agency. So a residential aged care facility hires agency staff to come in and perform services to their residents. That agency would be a labour hire service provider under the scheme and it would need to have a licence. However, the scheme also applies to certain recruitment and contractor management situations which would not commonly be considered to be labour hire. Some providers will need to be careful around those sorts of arrangements. Residential aged care providers should be considering their current labour arrangements and determining which ones are likely to constitute labour hire arrangements under the scheme. They should also be looking at their contractual arrangements with their various suppliers to ensure that there are requirements in the contract that the providers have licences where that's likely to be necessary. And finally, once the scheme's actually commenced on the 29th of October, the Labour Hire Licensing Authority will maintain a register of licensed labour hire service providers. So aged care service providers should be looking at that register to determine whether their contractors have licences. A standard home care arrangement where the home care service provider sends its employees to a client's house to provide services is not a labour hire situation and no licence will be required. However, a situation that involves subcontractors might attract the operation of the scheme depending on the nature of the arrangement. So if a home care provider has a more complex model in place, it should be having a close look at that arrangement to ensure that it doesn't become a labour hire service provider. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to get in touch if you have any other questions about how the scheme might affect your operations.